Welcome to the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County's Short-Term Rental Video Assistant. We will be addressing a variety of topics revolving around the short-term rental permit process, renewals, and appeals. We hope to better streamline the complexities of the short-term rental process for you. You will be able to select the topic module of most importance to your specific interest or view them in order. There are links to important websites and click-by-click examples of some of the more intricate procedures. In general, there are 4 steps to obtaining your short-term rental permit. This is the overall concept. First, you gather your short-term rental permit application documents. Then you're going to email them in for us to review. If approved, you will receive your permit application via email. Your next step, if required, is to obtain a fire marshal inspection. If that's not necessary, you'll go directly to pay for your permit and have it issued. The module outline is going to contain the basics, STRP permit application process, how to search for a STR property, neighbor notification process, permit renewal process, the appeal process and information, complaints, and my favorite, don't do this. Some of the basics for the short-term rental world. If you wish to market, advertise, and rent your dwelling for short-term rental, you must obtain a permit from Metro Codes Department. STRP permits are good for 1 year from the date of issuance and will expire if not renewed. Do not advertise or market the property before your permit is issued. That is against the law and will most likely lead to a 1-year postponement to be able to obtain a permit. Applying for a STRP permit is an online process, and you may drop your documents off in person if needed. Visit nashville.gov and search Apply for Short-Term Rental Property Permit for instructions, examples, and forms to apply for your short-term rental permit. If assistance is needed, email strpquestions@nashville.gov. The issue date and subsequent annual renewal date does not change. Owner-occupied STRP application process. Visit nashville.gov and do a search on short-term rental property permit application. Owner-occupied versus not owner-occupied. Access the appropriate STRP checklist. Non-owner applying affidavit. Property taxes, floor plan, insurance. The true and accurate affidavit. Neighbor notifications, HOA and contact affidavit, 2 pieces of identification, and submitting the application for review. Before we get into the modules, let's take a look at the short-term rental main web page. Visit nashville.gov. Scroll down to All Metro Services. Select it. In the filter section, type in short-term rental. You'll be looking for Apply for Short-Term Rental Property Permit and select. This will be your main source of information and guidance. Near the top, you will find links to checklists for each type of permit, owner-occupied and not owner-occupied. The core portion of the web page is presented in the same order as the application checklist. Each of the main topics will be covered as modules within this video. Toward the bottom of the page, there is additional information including payment of taxes, renewal information, and the legislative history of short-term rental permits. To begin with, select the checklist that you're going to work from, either owner-occupied or not owner-occupied. Let's go into the owner-occupied checklist. This coincides with the previous page. The first item that you want to take care of is the proof of payment that taxes are due. By clicking on the link, it'll take you to the assessor's webpage. You can do a search by address. Type in the location in question. Select the Search for Information tab. And the property will come up at the bottom. Select View Bill. From this screen, it has all the detailed information. Click on Bill. The PDF downloaded, but as an example, this is the result. You can submit just the first page. That's all we're going to need. Taxes only need to be current. They do not necessarily need to be paid in full. To create a floor plan, we've given you some examples. A floor plan of each floor of the dwelling must be submitted, even if you only plan on short-term renting a portion of the dwelling. Floor plans must include the outline or perimeter of the dwelling and contain walls, doors, windows, stairs, room names, and smoke detector locations. Smoke detectors are required in all sleeping areas. In every room in the path of egress to exit the dwelling, and in each story within the dwelling, including basements and garages. Floor plans may be professionally drawn or drawn by hand. Notice the entire perimeter of the dwelling is shown. Walls, doors, and windows create the rooms, and they are labeled. Smoke detectors are shown in their approximate locations. Do not submit a floor plan with more than 4 bedrooms. We cannot issue a short-term rental permit application with more than 4 bedrooms. A summary statement of insurance must be submitted. We don't need your entire 60-page policy, please. Just the summary pages, or what is sometimes called an accord statement. Information must contain the owner's current address, the address of the STRP property insured, fire coverage, hazard coverage, and liability coverage in the amount of $1 million per occurrence. A standard policy does not usually have this $1 million amount, so coordinate with your insurance company. Next is a notarized affidavit. Select the template. Notice it's owner-occupied, specifically for the owner-occupied permit. There's also a not owner-occupied affidavit. They are different. Make sure you're using the right one. The affidavit does need to be notarized. Notification to adjacent property owners. Detailed instructions can be found here. There is a link to the parcel viewer. That's a way to search on property. For detailed instruction, refer to the neighbor notification module. The next document is the HOA and contact information. It's a simple form. There are 2 parts to this form. At the top is the Homeowners Association certification. It's an or statement. The top portion is for no homeowners association existing on the property. The bottom portion is that yes, there is an association, but operating a short-term rental does not go against or violate any of the association agreement's bylaws. etc. The second portion to this form is the owner contact information. The owner's information needs to be complete. If there's a responsible party that's different than the owner, fill that information in complete as well. Owner-occupied requires 2 pieces of identification that show that you live at the property. A detailed list is here. You can read through and provide any 2 items within that list. Once you have all your documents gathered, please submit a single PDF, if at all possible, and email that to strpapplications@nashville.gov. We will then review your permit application. If we need more information, we will email you requesting what information is needed. Once we have all the documents in order, we will generate a permit application. That application will be emailed to you, and then you will either contact the fire marshal's office or pay for your permit directly. From the main application page, you will notice the notification of process change effective March 1st of this year. For single and 2-family homes, you will need a certification from an architect, engineer, or home inspector. For 3 dwellings or more on a lot, it will go through the old process of fire marshal certification. Once the fire marshal has signed off, you can then go online and pay for your permit. It will then be issued. The not owner-occupied short-term rental procedure is very similar to owner-occupied. There's a separate checklist because there's one important difference between the two. For reference, you can go back to the owner-occupied video for 95% of the instruction necessary. The biggest difference in not owner-occupied is what we call the chain of ownership. What the chain of ownership means is that it links the entity back to the individual behind the entity. For instance, if the property is owned by an LLC, we would need to see the documents or the articles of organization that will link the LLC to the individual that's actually applying for the permit. If there's other entities involved or a different name, we would need to see the necessary documents. Once again, it's just about linking the person to the entity. Be sure to use the proper affidavit for the permit type you are applying for. Determining owner-occupied versus not owner-occupied. The type of short-term rental permit available for a property is predominantly determined by the zoning district it resides in and what type of use is allowed per the district land use table. 2 sources will be used to assist you in your determination of STRP permit availability: Parcel Viewer and the district land use table. Refer to Nashville.gov website for these links. Use Parcel Viewer to search for a property and click on View Parcel Details to populate the left panel. The Zoning History tab, the zoning code is listed in order newest at the top. Now open the District Land Use table. The zoning districts are located at the top of the page and run horizontally. On the first page under Residential Uses, you will find Short-Term Rental Property, STRP Owner Occupied, followed by the letter A in most of the zoning districts. If you look at the top left of the page, you will see that the letter means that a STRP permit is available as an accessory to the principal use, which is a residential dwelling. Under Commercial Uses on the 3rd page toward the bottom, you will see Short-Term Rental Property, STRP Not Owner Occupied. The PC notation means that an STRP permit is available based on certain conditions. Note, the PC designation in the RM zoning districts no longer accept not owner-occupied STRP permits. Returning to Parcel Viewer and our example, we see the zoning code is DTC. Switch to the Land Use table and look at STRP owner-occupied and line it up with the DTC zoning code. The letter A means you can apply for an owner-occupied STRP permit. Now go to page 3 and do the same thing, and we see that the STRP not owner-occupied is permitted with conditions. Returning to the first page, our example is a multifamily condominium. So under Uses, go to the multifamily and follow it across to DTC, and we see that a multifamily condo is permitted by right. In summary, at our example address, you will be able to apply for either owner-occupied or not owner-occupied STRP permit. Hopefully, this will enable you to begin searching for an STRP property. Please submit any questions to strpquestions@nashville.gov. Note, the example of search process does not guarantee the property is eligible for a STRP permit. It is intended to provide preliminary determination only. For verification of property's eligibility, email strpquestions@nashville.gov. You must notify the property owners surrounding your property of your intent to short-term rent. Neighbor approval is not required. This notification process is only intended to inform your neighbor of your activity and how to contact you. The two methods of notification include hand signature of the owner and certified mail. A dated hand signature on the notification template from the owner suffices as notification. Notifications are to be sent to the owner's mailing address, which may not necessarily be the physical address. Any property that touches your property will receive a notification regardless of streets, alleys, or any other encumbrance. When a certified letter is sent, the mailing receipt must be filled out completely with the recipient's mailing information. We will be using Parcel Viewer to locate and identify the properties and mailing information needed for notifications. Please note, the properties used in this video were chosen at random and are for example purposes only. A quick overview of Parcel Viewer begins with a menu at the top right of the screen. The first icon is a search option, which enables the search tool at the lower portion of the screen. Other icons include base map imagery, layer list, changing map to street view, and a print option. The panel at the left side of the screen will contain a large amount of information of the selected property. Let's start with a typical residential search. The property is highlighted and an information bubble appears. By clicking on View Parcel Details, the information bar to the left is populated with that property's information. Here you will see the owner, the parcel address, and most importantly, the owner's mailing address. One method of finding out who to mail the notification to is to click on each property surrounding the subject property and clicking on View Parcel Details. You can then write down the owner and the owner's mailing address. A second method is to select the adjacent properties and export to an Excel spreadsheet. Remember, notifications are sent to any property that touches my property, regardless of streets, alleys, or any other encumbrance, except expressways and railroads. So let's create our search by selecting Shape on the search bar. 3 selections appear. I like to use the line command, but you can use whatever works for you. Begin by clicking on Neighbor's Property and selecting all the neighbors based on the definition I just mentioned. You will notice that the subject property is now surrounded by the properties that need notification. Select the Export to Excel option, open the file, and here is a list of properties to notify. Let me take a moment to clean it up a bit by removing the information we don't need. We now have the proper information to fill in the certified letter receipts. The next example is a corner house that also has adjacent properties with more than one dwelling on it. Our search process is the same as before. Click on Shape, select Line, but this time we need to make sure to select all the dwellings within the single property. Again, I've selected the properties that I would hit if I extended my property lines across streets. Now the information extraction is the same. Either click on the dwelling and write the owner's information down, or export the data to an Excel spreadsheet. Open the Excel file, remove the extraneous information, A special portion of information on this example is that the properties that have 2 homes on them have a third piece of information we do not need. These properties are called HPRs, which stand for Horizontal Property Regime, and consist of house number 1, house number 2, and the common land shared by both homeowners. We do not need to notify the land, therefore we can delete the entry whose parcel ID ends in 90000CO. We are left with 8 neighbors that we need to send our notification letter to. Another example is an apartment complex. Short-term rental property permits are always issued to the property owner. With the owner's permission, a tenant may apply for a short-term rental permit. Because all the units of the complex are owned by the same owner, the adjoining units do not need to be notified. However, any property surrounding the apartment building does. I would suggest working from the Excel spreadsheet for this one. Again, let's clean up the data to make it easier to work with. As in previous examples, there's a property that ends in 90000CO. This is for a homeowners association and we want to keep it. What we are able to remove are duplicate owners. No matter how many properties an entity owns, they only need to be notified once. We can delete all the duplicate owners by looking at the address. Now the list is reduced to something manageable. A condominium complex is different than an apartment complex, as each unit is individually owned. We notify any unit that touches my unit and the condo association. This acts as a means to notify all units within the complex. We also notify all adjacent properties. The result of this search include properties owned by Metro. Any property owned by Metro does not need to be notified, so we can delete the entry. Any duplicate ownership can be deleted as well. Our final example is of another condominium complex where there are different owners above and below you. Let's say we want to permit Unit 406. We conduct our search crossing the units on either side and including 406, along with the surrounding properties. As we export the file to the Excel and clean it up, we can remove the Metro property as we do not need to notify. Now if we look back at the map, we can determine what properties are above and below us by creating another search by selecting our unit 406 only. From the results, we can see that units 306 and 506 are above and below us and will need to be notified. By inspection, we can also see our neighbors 205 and 207 will need to be notified as well. Returning to the Excel file, we can remove these properties that we don't need to notify, including 406. Notice we leave the condo association in as one of the properties to receive a notification. To summarize this scenario, we only notify those above, below, and to the sides, and including the association. On a side note, if we return to Parcel Viewer and click on one of the units, the information bubble appears, and within the black band at the top, you will see a white triangle or arrow. Click on it, and it cycles through the properties in a vertical plane. As part of the notification to our adjacent properties, there are two different letters that can be sent. If you're going to be applying for owner-occupied, you select the owner-occupied. If you are applying for a not owner-occupied permit, you select that letter. Select the appropriate template. It will open in a Word document and you are able to manipulate as needed. Once you have completed the letter, the most common method of sending your letter is certified mail. This is necessary to provide proof that your neighbor has been notified. This is an example of the certified mail receipt that you would get from your local post office. You start with the blank form. It needs to be filled in completely with the recipient's mailing address, including name. It needs to be stamped by the post office. What you submit with your permit application is a copy of the letter and the certified mail receipt. Part of the certification process is the actual signed receipt that is mailed back to you. It is not necessary for you to wait until you receive this. With your permit application, you can send in the letter along with the stamped and completely filled in green and white receipt. Permit renewal process. All STRP permits must be renewed annually and expire 1 year from the date they are issued, if not renewed. Once a permit expires, it is automatically canceled, and continued operation as a short-term rental without a permit is illegal. The STRP permit renewal process is now completed online. Email renewal notifications 60 and 45 days prior to expiration will be sent to owner and contact of record. It is the owner's responsibility to ensure their permit is current, even if a property manager is involved. This is your permit. If you have any doubt of your permit expiration or have additional questions or problems, email strprenewals@nashville.gov. If your STRP permit application has been denied or revoked, you may appeal to the Metropolitan Short-Term Rental Appeals Board. The board meets monthly. Cost to appeal is $409. Email david.freybutt@nashville.gov to initiate the appeal process. There are subsequent requirements including a mailer and sign posting. These details are explained after the initial submission of appeal is recorded. It can take up to 6 weeks, depending on when the appeal initiation occurs, before your appeal meeting. To get an idea of process and procedures of STRP appeal meetings, visit youtube.com and search Nashville Short-Term Rental Appeal Board. If you have any complaints associated with short-term rental, you may call the 24-hour, 7 days a week hotline at 615-454-9225 or visit hostcompliance.com/tips. Very important section, don't do this. The single most item that people get wrong is thinking that changing ownership from a person to their trust or a single entity LLC is not a change of ownership, and that is wrong. So, don't change ownership. It automatically cancels the permit. This includes person to single entity trust, LLC, incorporation, etc. Do not advertise more than what you are permitted for, bedrooms and/or occupancy. Don't advertise without displaying the permit number. Don't prepare or serve food to guests. Don't provide alcohol.